We use them every single day. I mean, they're in our pockets, on our desks, even on our wrists. But have you ever really stopped and thought about where computers actually came from? The story is so much longer and, honestly, way more surprising than you probably think. So let's dive into the history of calculation. All right, let's start with a really simple question. When I say the word computer, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A laptop? Your phone? Maybe one of those old beige boxes from back in the day? But what if I told you the very first computer didn't have a screen, or a keyboard, or even an electrical plug? Yep, you heard that right. Before we had circuits and software, the word computer didn't describe a machine at all. It described a person. The original computers were human. The word computer, first written down way back in 1613, wasn't a thing. It was a job title. These human computers were the number-crunching experts of their day. It was a serious profession, often needing years of mathematical training to do these complex, tedious calculations by hand. So, how did we get from a person with a pen and paper to the machine you're probably watching this on right now? Well, that incredible journey from human to machine started by figuring out what a machine would even need to do to be called a computer. Today, the definition is, a lot more technical. We think of a computer as a programmable machine, an electronic device for shuffling data around, or something that follows a list of instructions we call a program. But really, at its core, it's just any device that helps us with calculations. And all modern computers, from your smartwatch to a massive supercomputer, they all share three main characteristics. They respond to specific instructions, they can run through a pre-recorded list of those instructions, and they can store and pull up huge amounts of data incredibly fast. That combo is basically their superpower. Long before anyone ever harnessed electricity, the quest to build a machine that could do math was already well underway. This was the mechanical age, a time of gears and rods and brilliant inventors trying to build a better calculator. And this journey starts way, way back, around 2400 BC, with the abacus, a simple but really effective tool for doing math. For thousands of years, progress was pretty slow. It wasn't until 1614 that we got Napier's bones, a clever tool for multiplication. Then things started to speed up. Just a few decades later, in 1642, Blaise Pascal invented the Pascaline, a machine with gears that could add and subtract. And finally, in 1672, the stepped reckoner was the first machine that could do all four basic functions: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Each one was a huge step forward. But see, a calculator just does one thing at a time. The next big idea was a total game changer. How do you give a machine an entire list of instructions and have it just follow them on its own? This was the programmable dream. And, inspiration can come from some really weird places. The key idea for programmability didn't come from a mathematician. It came from a weaver. Around 1801, Joseph Marie Jacquard invented this amazing loom that used cards with holes punched in them to automatically create super complex patterns in fabric. If you change the cards, you change the pattern. It was, for all intents and purposes, a programmable machine. And that idea, it directly inspired an English mathematician named Charles Babbage. He came up with this concept for a gigantic steam-powered machine called the Analytical Engine. And this thing wasn't just a calculator. It was the first real design for a general-purpose, programmable computer. But while Babbage was the architect, it was Augusta Ada Byron, who we know as Ada Lovelace, who truly saw the machine's potential. Back in the 1840s, she wrote algorithms for the Analytical Engine, and we now see those notes as the very first computer programs. Her amazing insight was realizing it could do more than just crunch numbers. It could process symbols, music, anything you could represent with logic. She was absolutely a prophet of the computer age. The problem was, Babbage's mechanical dreams were just too complex for the technology he had. They were never fully built. To make his vision a reality, we had to move past gears and levers and into the world of electronics. And that was the electronic revolution, where things started moving at lightning speed. This shift happened incredibly fast, with a few key machines bridging the gap. Over in Germany, Konrad Zuse built the Z1, the first programmable computer, a mechanical marvel. In the US, you had the Harvard Mark I, which was this kind of electromechanical hybrid. But the real leap came in 1942 with the Atanasoff-Berry computer, or ABC, the very first electronic digital computing device. It used vacuum tubes instead of moving parts, and that changed everything. And when they went electronic, they went big. These first computers were absolutely enormous. What's this number? 18,000. That's how many delicate, glowing vacuum tubes it took to power one of the very first and most famous electronic computers. That machine was the ENIAC. Completed in 1946, it was a monster. It filled a whole room and was 1,000 times faster than anything that came before it. But it had a huge flaw. To give it a new job, you couldn't just type in a new program. Nope. A whole team of people had to spend days physically pulling out and plugging in wires to rewire it. And that brings us to the single most important innovation in modern computing. A few years later, the design for a new machine called the UNIVAC introduced the stored program concept. Instead of being wired from the outside like ENIAC, the UNIVAC held its program instructions in its own internal memory, right next to the data. This is the fundamental way every single computer, tablet, and phone works today. So, with that essential design figured out, the computer was finally ready to leave the laboratory. The race was on to turn these one-of-a-kind science experiments into commercial products that companies could actually buy and use. And after that, the firsts just started rolling in. In 1949, you get the world's first computer company. Just 2 years later, they sold the UNIVAC I, the first commercial computer. The race was on to make them smaller and more accessible, which led to 1981 and the Osborne I, the first portable computer, even if portable meant dragging around a 24-pound machine the size of a suitcase. So just think about that for a second. From the abacus to that 24-pound portable computer took over 4,000 years. But from that machine to the supercomputer that now fits in your pocket, that took only a few decades. The speed of this progress is just staggering, and it leaves us with one really exciting question to think about. What will the next great leap look like?